franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould's The Lifestyle, pages 3 to 6. Tribal rituals of spouse exchange, Neolithic hordes dancing naked upon the heath, whole cities pouring into the streets in libidinous revelry. Throughout human history, these practices have been used as a means to extend kinship ties, as celebrations of fertility, or as an annual blowing off of steam. Erotic rites were common in Canaan when God made his covenant with Abraham. As late as the 1940s, extra mateship liaison was an approved custom in 39% of cultures studied throughout the world, from the Himalayas to the South Seas, and from the Arctic to the Amazon. Today we know that there is a deeper, unconscious motivation behind the rituals. They combine the two biological imperatives that paradoxically have governed the sex lives of humans for eons: the drive to seek long-term partners for raising children, and the equally powerful drive for genetic and sexual variety. Of course, many of us do not accept shared eroticism between couples as a normal part of life. Sensual play between more than two people is often seen as coercive, compulsive, or even evil. That belief is the chief reason why one of the great stories of our time has remained truly untold. This book breaks the lock on denial. It tells the story of the lifestyle, a subculture that is now thriving worldwide, one in which millions of middle-class, married couples openly express their erotic fantasies with others. Accompany your own spouse to a lifestyle event, and you will change your mind about the boundaries of behavior for pair-bonded humans. Acting within strict rules of etiquette, lifestyle couples participate to varying degrees in everything from sexual costume parties to multi-partner sex as a form of social recreation within marriage. Every ball they attend revives the time-honored tradition of the rustic bacchanal. The lifestyle has grown so quickly in recent years that wherever you live, you won't have trouble finding it. It is not an underground movement or a cult. It is a public, grassroots heterosexual orientation among mainstream couples who claim to have overcome the kind of loneliness, jealousy, and shame adulterous marrieds endure. Lifestyle play couples belong to 300 formerly affiliated clubs in 24 countries and to thousands of unaffiliated clubs. They have their own travel industry that flies them to a dozen vacation spots catering to their tastes. Hundreds of magazines and thousands of websites, news groups, and chat rooms keep them connected. Large lifestyle conventions are held 11 times a year in 8 U.S. states, sometimes monopolizing entire resorts. The 3-day Lifestyles 96 convention in San Diego drew 3,500 people from 437 cities in 7 countries. 1/3 of the participants had postgraduate degrees, almost a third voted Republican, and 40% considered themselves either practicing Protestants, Catholics, or Jews. Public figures with towering positions in society, pro-sex feminists, and even evangelical Christians attended the convention as lifestylers. But where did this term lifestyle come from? Aren't the couples who say they are in the lifestyle talking about swinging, the free and easy sharing of spouses at parties? Lifestylers will patiently tell you that some of their number don't go that far. They adopted their global name in the 1980s because more and more straight couples were attending their events, and they wanted to be freed from the snappy terms that made them into media fast food. A lifestyle party quite often does not culminate in sexual intercourse among couples. Roughly 10% of the people who attend just like being in an atmosphere where such an interchange is conceivable. Lifestylers believe they live in a certain style that melds responsible family values, matrimony, children, emotional monogamy, with the erotic cultivation of their marriages through the practice of rites they celebrate as fun and natural. It's that simple, and it's that complicated. Even the most avid proponents of the subculture admit the behavior of play couples can sometimes appear pornographic, a threat to civil society, especially when strobe lit in a camera's flash or summed up by the huge bug-eyed mainstream press as a shocking expose of swingers running rampant. Lifestylers have been described as uncivilized, dangerous, smelly, repellent, tacky, and revolting, labeled as deviates, and zoomorphized as lizards and hippos. Never comfortable with the chaos of sex, city police forces and government agencies regularly investigate lifestyle clubs. They infiltrate dances and threaten to withdraw the liquor licenses of the hotels that host them. They raid private homes and charge participants with public lewdness, and they sometimes wind up arresting themselves, since a number of male and female police officers are lifestyle members. Despite this harassment by morality squads, most studies show lifestylers to be absolutely not deviant and quite normal psychologically. They also note the behavior of swingers does not involve a victim. The movement has a California-based overseeing body called the Lifestyles Organization, or LSO, that certifies clubs as ethical, non-discriminatory, and law-abiding. The Lifestyles out-of-the-closet spokespeople, who come from the ranks of social workers and business managers, doctors and mortgage brokers, insist their millions of compatriots behave in a safe and consensual fashion. On LSO's board of directors sits an executive from Mensa and a former chair of the sociology department at the University of California at Riverside. They broaden the discussion of the lifestyle by claiming that when examined in the cool light of the latest research on the biological, evolutionary, and emotional roots of human sexuality, the lives of many play couples force us to re-ask some of the most crucial questions of human history. Why, for instance, does the word morals always refer almost entirely to sexual matters? Why has sexual self-sacrifice always been seen as morally superior to sexual indulgence? And why has religion always been so angrily focused on controlling our sex lives, from the time God sent down fire and brimstone to exterminate homosexuals and orgiasts, to the Reverend Billy Graham's remark that if God doesn't do to America what he did to Sodom and Gomorrah, he owes them an apology? For average citizens, however, it comes down to this question. Can you dress for the harem or the beach? Go to a party with your spouse of 10 years, enjoy a night of bacchic sensuality, and still be a good, happily married parent? You can if you're in the lifestyle, at least according to lifestylers. And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com or visit our website www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould's The Lifestyle, pages 14 to 16. I then posed what in my own mind was the big question. How did they handle jealousy? Why were they not plagued with stabs of hate and angry recriminations that a single wayward kiss at a normal party would elicit from a spouse? I told them I was married for 22 years, and that if I ever caught my wife cheating on me, my entire world would be upended. Who's talking about cheating? Murray laughed. Watching her is one of my biggest pleasures in this lifestyle. I enjoy the pleasure of Murray when he's enjoying sex with a woman, Kara said. I do get a vicarious thrill, but that doesn't violate our devotion. And Murray knows that my pleasure with someone, be it a man or a woman, doesn't lessen my devotion to him. Again and again, I would hear that refrain in the ballroom. In the lifestyle, they all said, veteran play couples become connoisseurs at transforming their own spouse into an alluring fantasy figure. Once they learned that the relationship was not threatened by comarital sex acts that very rarely became extramarital affairs, a husband or wife found observing their partner with another was an enormous aphrodisiac. And they often watched each other with their eyes locked in love. After parties, they had sex as if they'd just met. You see, Ellie said, straight people, they cheat on each other all the time. tremendous percentages. They lie, they sneak, but the erotic act is part of our marriage. It is not an act of cheating, but play, flirtation. It's between us as a couple and someone else. Jerry is always there. He is there. We do not cheat. We do not lie. Kara kissed Murray's forehead. I always save the last dance for him. None of this is to say that after expanding my circle of acquaintances and new friends, new faces, I did not encounter marriages that had rearranged themselves in the club, that people were not hurt, or that I didn't learn of swinging dropouts. I tracked down one such exile from the subculture, a Vancouver professional who told me that he regretted the day he introduced his common-law wife to the erotic exchanges at Jim and Linda's. He said they were not part of any depressing anonymous look-for-a-space-and-jump-in crowd. They had in fact set up a series of sensitive, lasting friendships with intellectual couples in which several dinner dates or camping trips would go by without sex. The difference, of course, was that if sex did come up, it was not forbidden. He and his partner had an understanding whereby they shared the excitement as part of our relationship. But after a year of pick and choose, fun at the club, his woman experienced a flaming session with the mythical man of her dreams and was lost to him for good. It was a devastating shock, he told me, pointing out that he had somehow deluded himself regarding the possibility of an unexpected, heartfelt detonation occurring during sex. It would be wrong to say that this is not a charged and dangerous atmosphere to become involved in. I'd hate to see you advocating it. Not long after, he offered me this warning. However, he was back on the margins of the lifestyle, attending parties on special occasions, and not long after that, I learned that his former common-law wife had dumped her swinging lover and then taken up with a straight, married man. And that was an excerpt of Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. If you would like to read more about this, consult Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website at www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle, pages 27 to 29. There's a tale the president of the Lifestyles organization likes to relate about the moment he realized he would spend the rest of his days publicly fighting for swingers' rights. I first heard this tale when I arrived at LSO headquarters in the summer of 1996 and found Robert McKinley on the phone with a couple of members of Dallas's Inner Circles Club, recently arrested in a raid that had also netted a house full of their white-collar friends, including a Drug Enforcement Administration agent and his partner. When McGinley got off the phone, he turned to me and began to tell his Pebble story. He said he'd named the story after an incident in a children's novel in which an Etruscan warrior, vowing to avenge the devastation of a town, picks up a pebble and carries it with him as a reminder of the change in his consciousness. McGinley's Pebble story takes place in 1966 in Washington, D.C., outside the headquarters of the Department of the Air Force. The compactly built and bearded 33-year-old was then an aerospace engineer employed by the Bendix Corporation to design and test some of the most sophisticated electronic systems in America's aircraft arsenal. He was a civilian, but in his line of work he needed a security clearance, subject to military regulations, which included a code that oversaw the sex lives of all uniformed personnel. The week before, McGinley had been summoned to Washington from his office on California's Travis Air Force Base, where the top-secret SR-71 spy plane was being tested. The charge against Tech Rep McGinley was sexual deviance. Walking beside McGinley on the road to his epiphany was a senior bureaucrat named Cronin, the head of an investigation team that monitored the sexuality of soldiers. Without legal warrant, the Air Force had been intercepting McGinley's private mail and then turning it over to Cronin's team, which had been working its way through a web of sexual intrigue that spidered out from almost every military base in the country. One of the strands they pulled from the web led to the hapless McGinley, then in the middle of a divorce from his fundamentalist Christian wife. Some months before, McGinley happened to have answered an ad placed by a sergeant's wife in a swinger magazine. Her erotic reply to him and his reply to her had brought him to this moment. Overhead, a Huey chopper was hovering so that McGinley and Cronin had to shout to make themselves heard as they approached the building where McGinley was, in effect, going to be court-martialed for the crime of composing steamy prose. He was terrified of ruin. He had 5 children to support, debts to pay, and he was totally dependent on his security clearance. If he lost that clearance, he was afraid he'd never get a job in his field again. He'd be fixing television sets. I said to Cronin, "Sir, I swear it never occurred to me that if I wrote a letter to a swinging lady, I would become a security risk." Cronin, 6 feet tall to McGinley's 5'5", and with eyes that never lost focus from a point 1 yard in front of his hat brim, informed McGinley that his team had some 50,000 cases of swingers under investigation. The government had reached the trigger point when it came to this threat, and they were going to remove it by court-martialing and discharging all involved. God, I was naive, McGinley remembered. In fact, never forgot for a second. I said, "Why? Were there any swingers who were communists?" "Because communists in those days were traitors," Kermit said. "No, but swinging leads to blackmail by communists, ruined lives, marriage breakups, suicides, and lost jobs." So I sat there at the hearing and heard them say the same thing over and over again, how swingers ruin themselves. And when they told me they were revoking my clearance, and I began to collapse inside, it hit me. Swinging didn't cause what I was feeling. They caused what I was feeling by doing this to me. That was the pebble. That turned my whole life around. I thought of the 50,000 people going through what I was going through for what? And I said under my breath, "You bastards, you have picked the wrong guy to do this to." As I would learn, it was one of the ironies of McGinley's life that the Department of the Air Force, which rejected him and launched his career as a swinging activist, unwittingly worshipped the memories of America's first modern spouse sharers. According to 2 doctors of sexology named Joan and Dwight Dixon, who have been in the lifestyle since the 60s and writing on sexuality in journals for 2 decades, the original spouse sharers were none other than World War II fighter pilots. The marital exchanges that Cronin had been determined to wipe out, because they supposedly led to marriage breakups and ruined lives, first emerged as an Air Force ritual that united families into a clan and provided an insurance policy for wives. And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com. Or visit our website at www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle, pages 81 to 83. Sometimes the nude must go naked, and the naked must go nude, Chuck declared, sitting among a dozen lifestylers under one of the palm umbrellas that lined the clothing-optional beach. Don't confuse me now, Carla called back to him from the shore's edge. I'm trying to get this right here. I don't get asked this every day. She drew her legs up from the sand and placed her elbows on her knees and the heels of her hands against her temples. A few feet from where I sat beside her, a flock of pelicans rose and fell in the waves of the sea of quartz, keeping their beady eyes on Carla, who'd been moodily tossing them crusts of her sandwich. She was a man-sized Westerner, as much a presence on the sand as she probably was in the corporate office where she ordered around personnel. She wore 2-inch dangling earrings, a thin necklace, a thinner waist chain that caught the sun just above her belly button, 2 ankle bracelets, and bright red polish on all 20 nails. When she'd shown up that morning on the beach, Joe and Doris had opened their eyes wide at the way she adorned and sexualized her naked, but definitely not nude body. I suppose when it comes right down to it, Carla finally told me, an immoral act's gotta be something you do that's gonna benefit you, which you know is gonna hurt someone else. That's my definition of an immoral act, seeing as I'm being quoted. She turned around from the water and mussed up her short, wet hair. Ed, she said to her husband, seated on a lounge chair behind us, I get that right from your point of view? It ain't quite, if it feels good to do it, said Ed, a craggy-featured construction boss. But then you never did do unto others what you didn't want others to do unto you. Why, I'm a fortunate man. Correct, Carla replied. Then she swiveled around and yanked on my ear. Moral's what other people put in here. Being kind's what we're born with here. She pressed her forefinger against my chest, then repeated the gesture on her own reddening breast. Uh-oh, give me back my suntan oil, Bill, she yelled to an ad executive she'd slept with last night. Wearing only a blue yachting cap, Skinny Bill stood up from where he was massaging oil onto his wife's bottom beside the umbrella and ambled obediently over to Carla. There's another question you should write about when you look at morals, he said, lathering up his hands with Papa 21 and smoothing them over Carla's shoulders and breasts. When you look at morals, you have to look inside the person telling you what's moral. 9 out of 10 times, what moralists say is not what they're thinking of doing. He squatted and kneaded the lotion down over Carla's belly and onto her thighs. Look around here. Eyes are the window to the soul. Everyone is saying exactly what they're thinking, doing what they're saying. Ask me, that's why the moral majority's pissed off all the time. Ed reasoned, moving from his lounge and sitting beside Carla. He too lathered up his hands and began to massage his wife's lower back. They want to do it, but they ain't allowed, even to say so. Oh, they're doing it. They're doing it, Carla laughed. Most moralists are not only mean, they're unscrupulous. I shifted my eyes to Chuck, the New York school principal who lay on a plastic lounge chair sipping a Cuba Libre beside his wife of 20 years, a counselor named Leah. Both were bemusedly contemplating Carla, their favorite among the 30 lifestylers scattered around the discs of shade provided by the thatch umbrellas posted along the shore. Chuck and Leah had recently accompanied our tour leader, Joyce, on the most orgiastic lifestyles holiday, the houseboat getaway. But they were soft swingers. As they told me last night at the disco, they liked to watch other couples make love and often made love while watching, but they didn't exchange partners. Like the 6 other couples around them, who had coalesced into an intimate clique since landing in Loreto a couple of days before, they were trim and good-looking. Leah had a curly, thick mane of red hair and narrow, refined eyes that squinted at the world with pleasant intelligence. Chuck, at first glance, seemed like a ferociously intimidating schoolmaster, tall and black-bearded, with dark eyes that focused on you intently when you talked. Although more often than not, he was searching his mind for the maximum riddling direction he could yank a conversation. "Oh, is it my turn now?" he asked when he noticed my gaze on him. "God made man, and man made religion." And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com. Or visit our website, www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle, pages 116 to 118. Swinging never made a bad marriage good, but it can make a good marriage better, averred Joyce's curly-headed husband Richard, who had walked over from a neighboring umbrella as part of his constant patrolling to earn his free holiday. It's not for everyone, but if you look at who's in it, everyone's represented. These aren't stupid jerks who take drugs to have a good time. They're socially great people. You know what the biggest shock is to people who go to our club for the first time? Nothing shocking about the folks in there? I asked. Exactly. You should write that. I was being agreeable, of course, but in order to be objective about non-criminals who've been historically hated on strictly moral grounds, you have to offer them dignity and sympathy, favors not usually granted to revolting heterosexual hedonists. I noticed Chuck and Leah, Ed and Carla, and Elliot and Linda veering off from the other pool-bound lifestylers, and I broke from Rich and Joyce, plowing through the sand and catching up with the six at the brick path before the bar cabana at the top of the beach. Principle is as high as I want to go. It's where I can do the most good, Chuck was telling Linda as they entered the cabana. Beyond us was the hot tub where a school of lifestyle women were drifting against each other, shiny as porpoises. Two of them waved and then mooned us. At the level I'm at, you have a practical proximity to the kids and to the people that work under you, and you can take the bullshit policies that are coming down at you and work them into your effective curriculum goals. We've got a tough school in a heavy gang area, but we've got a very good learning environment. So are you known as the principal that makes a gangsta school work? Linda asked him. Never been tempted to enter that bubble, Chuck replied. I've been asked to go on speaking tours, but I told them, look, what I do, the way I do it, is not transferable. The goal is pretty universal, but I could tell you that in one sentence. Get them to understand that every single thing they do has consequences. Everything proceeds from that. I looked at the four women in the hot tub rubbing their breasts together for a couple of husbands who were videotaping them, then at Chuck, then at Joe and Doris, who were walking up the brick path on their way to catch a taxi to the Mission Church in Loretto. There's no conflict here at all, hombre, Chuck said, following my gaze. This is harmless entertainment. The consequence is pleasure. It's just real hedonist enjoyment with the right people, Leah said, and by turning her back on the hot tub, she seemed to be excluding the four women who were now tightly encircling the two cameramen. The people that we're attracted to require a certain level of intimacy prior to having sex. And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website at www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle, pages 209 to 211. In 1995, Baker and Bellis published their complete findings in Human Sperm Competition, Copulation, Masturbation, and Infidelity, which demolished the notion that sperm were merely programmed to swim to the ovum, that females were naturally monogamous, and that males' ejaculations and inseminate were not governed in any critical way by millions of years of female behavior. They discovered the smoking gun of natural human-female infidelity. There's Kinsey, pronounced Sarah Blaffer Hardy in an interview in 1997. There's Masters and Johnson. There's Baker and Bellis. They're giants in the world of sex research. I think they're heroes. Their disturbing conclusion was that these sexual adaptations were so fundamental that they could only have been shaped by evolution. The innate male fear of female licentiousness appeared justified. In our evolutionary past, monogamy had probably never existed as a biological norm for our species, nor did it exist today. Every one of us, Baker wrote in his popular book Sperm Wars, is the person we are today because one of our recent ancestors produced an ejaculate competitive enough to win a sperm war. Embedded for millions of years in the genes of every man is the absolute conviction that his partner could be having sex with someone else within days, hours, or minutes of having sex with him. The longer the time she spends away from him, the more convinced his body becomes, the body being a more accurate measure of evolutionary tendencies than a wishful mind, what I have termed SCS, and the increased pleasure in ejaculation it causes men, is the naturally selected manner in which males combat spousal licentiousness. Whenever a husband prepares to have sex with his wife, he unconsciously weighs the odds that she has been or will be unfaithful to him. To increase the chances of winning the sperm wars that might follow, he needs to introduce more sperm. And this is just what he does. Unconscious in straight men, cultivated and enjoyed by swinging men, SCS is a product of nature. Suppose a straight couple are living together in ostensible monogamy, seeing each other every day and having sex a couple of times a week. Every time they make routine love, the man will deposit some 200 million sperm cells, depending on how much his loading muscles squeeze out from the two sperm tubes rising out of the testicles, and on the number of orgasmic spurts he employs to deliver the sperm and seminal fluid from the prostate. According to the old view, all these sperm were, by design, fertile egg getters. But Baker and Bellis thought there could be another reason for the profusion. They discovered that less than 1% of a male's vast number of sperm were programmed for this job. More than 4/5 kamikaze sperm were designed to actively hunt down and kill the sperm cells of other males in the female's vagina, cervix, and womb. And just under 1/5 blockers were designed to obstruct the path of another male's sperm. Hence, the billions of sperm a male's testicles produce every month, enough to fertilize every female on the planet, most of them warriors ready for combat in the bodies of philandering women. According to Baker and Bellis, a male would be totally unaware of the different war divisions in his inseminate, nor would he be able to control the number of troops he was ejaculating. At work was a blind evolutionary process governed by genetic inheritance. This process had selected for both the composition of a male sperm based on the probability of having to fight a war and the amount of sperm cells the male's body instinctively knew it must deliver to the female based on the immediate likelihood of that war. The routine delivery of millions of sperm, which could survive up to 5 days in the female, served as a kind of screen against surprise attack by a rival. Baker called the act of routine sex topping up. Returning to our straight couple, suppose the man's wife goes away for 3 days on a business trip with some colleagues that include an ex-boyfriend. Consciously, the husband thinks she's a loyal wife, but his genetic inheritance tells him differently. The night before she returns, he feels the urge to masturbate, out of boredom he thinks. But his body is telling him to expel old sperm and shunt to the front of his sperm tubes younger sperm ready for battle. Normally, after 3 days without sex, he would inseminate her with the usual number of sperm. Their time apart, however, signals to the husband's most basic instinct that an enemy could be at the gate, and his body begins preparing for war. Eventually, the single cannon shot of that war will be an act of increased pleasure. And that was an excerpt from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website at www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from Terry Gould, The Lifestyle, pages 232 to 233. Generally, Butler wrote, swingers agreed that for successful swinging, a couple had to have a viable relationship based on love. At home, that meant constant communication, respectful language, and keeping arguments free of personal attacks. At a party, the number one rule was reassurance. No matter how enamored marrieds allowed themselves to become with others on the dance floor, or lost in passion in bed, spouses, by touch, word, or after-sex discussion, must always strive to comfort each other with the knowledge that their pleasure was part of a co-marital experience, not a progression to an extramarital love affair. Ignoring the rule of reassurance led to a feeling of betrayal no different from what straight couples experienced when they got wise to an adulterous spouse. Abiding by this rule meant putting the marriage first at all times. That is why Butler could claim that swinging marrieds probably represent the least revolutionary of the emerging alternative lifestyles that he examined in his book. To non-swingers, of course, it seems incredible that one could enjoy sex with an intriguing extramarital partner and not feel anything beyond non-committed love. But veteran swingers say they have learned how to put a cap on a romantic experience. You go off privately with someone, Jennifer Lomas once explained to me, alluding to her preference for closed swinging, and you have a fantasy affair with a beginning, a middle, and a fond farewell. You just compress it down to an evening so no one gets hurt. There's no midweek calls, oh, I love you, I have to see you again. There's an understanding. This is happening in the lifestyle. The art of it is you feel admired and affectionate, so it's erotic, but you let your husband know it's not a threat, it's a fantasy with a friend. It should always be borne in mind that these are long-married, middle-aged people who are able to function this way. Most swingers will tell you that couples under 30 or couples just falling in love are incapable of combining all the fun of a short-term extramarital fling with all the social, economic, and emotional benefits of traditional fidelity, which the social rules of the lifestyle allow. Couples in their 30s and 40s, swingers say, are much better equipped than younger folks to accept that their beguiling diversions are, in a literal sense, as fantastic as a Hollywood dream. Middle-aged swingers easily step in and out of their fantasies simply because they have been around the block a few times and know how to control their hearts. Because their fantasies are bookended by a loving marriage, they are recognized as plausible only during the experience of the fantasy, not beyond. The entire play couple philosophy is structured around sharing fantasies, in Bob McGinley's words, and it requires the maturity to be able to strictly circumscribe the experience of the fantasy. Forbidden fantasies derive their texture and pleasure from their seeming impossibility, but swingers believe it isn't that much of a compromise to experience them in the safety of a sanctioned environment with the approval of their spouse. The lifestyle party provides the venue, sans the lying and hurt that an affair can cause. Overall, the rule of engagement couples follow allows them both to display the kind of emotion to extramarital partners that keeps encounters erotic and express love within the marriage to keep the encounters non-threatening. The other outstanding issue addressed by Bob and Judy's questionnaire was coercion. One of the few marital rules actually written down in the lifestyle is the rule of consensuality. which in theory protects lifestyle spouses against the possibility that either the husband or wife might draw the other into an activity not previously agreed upon. Everyone has the right of refusal, states the boldface typed in Etiquette and Swinging, the handbook of the North American Swing Club Association. The actual sexual activity engaged in by swingers can be as varied as the people involved. Everything, however, is always consensual. And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website at www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould, pages 265 to 266. Audrey and her two spouses, Louis and Mitch, climbed onto stools and invited the 100 men and women sitting on the floor to share their saga in polyfidelity. As I'd heard stated and restated in a variety of tribal drum sessions and seminars over the past 3 days, polyfidelity is a term used by idealistic lifestylers to describe a new relationship form. It means exactly what it says. Polyfidelists are faithful to many. Like swingers, they make love with more than one partner, but unlike swingers, they have more than one partner to whom they are faithful. This weekend marked the 10th annual gathering of these polyamorous folks, and it was held in Harbin Hot Springs Resort, a sacred healing place in the dry mountains above the Napa-Sonoma wine valleys. The conference was called, definitively, Loving More. We are a work in progress, Audrey, a corporate lawyer, explained, meaning that she, her legal husband Louis, and her co-husband Mitch were in the process of getting some of their approved lovers to move in with them, which is what most of the people here were up to as well. In fact, the redwood walls of the rustic meeting hall fluttered with letters pinned there by both veteran and neophyte poly couples announcing their aspirations for more. As in this purple sheet with a smiling face that I noted down. Loving dyad seeking to be more. We are looking to develop a close, loving, committed, polyfidelitous, lifelong partnership with others. Talk to us. Or this one, we are looking for a very special man to be part of our lives and relationship. I am 23, 5 foot 6 inches, attractive, and manage a law firm. My husband is a 35-year-old accountant. We're both into science fiction fandom. Our daughter is an adorable, well-behaved 5-year-old. Please call me at. If a man answers, communicate. Warmly yours, Regina. Standing by the sliding door to the patio, haloed by these wing-like personal ads, was Ryam Nearing, one of the chief organizers of the conference, now bouncing her naked baby Zeke on her hip. The wholesome-looking Ryam had a primary spouse named Brett Hill, the confirmed father of little Zeke, plus a legal husband, another co-husband, and one co-wife. Polyfidelitists give their group marriages funky names like Jubilee and Sanity Mix. Ryam's Hawaii-based tribe was called Sintony Family. Perhaps because it was meant to be a model for the world, the Sintony family was considered by many polyfidelitists at the conference to be the most puritanical expression of their subculture. In Ryam's family, you really can't have sex with someone until they're in the family and they move in, Audrey had told me outside on the porch. It's like no sex before marriage. I mean, Ryam and Brett have the poly version of Ozzy and Harriet. At the moment, handsome Brett was down at the lower hot tub, giving a seminar just as popular as Audrey's. Tips on finding other poly people with locals and online. Everybody's relationship is a work in progress, Audrey affirmed on her stool. So what we're going to be relating to you over the next 2 hours is our own particular experience in this lifestyle. It is not a judgment or statement that this is the right or wrong way to do it. We hope in turn that you will respect that this is our way of doing things. All of us in the poly lifestyle have a lot of humility and awareness that family expansion is an organic process. And that was an excerpt from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com. Or visit our website, www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould, pages 283 to 284. Contemporary context is everything here. The year 1961 was the height of the Cold War. The nuclear doomsday clock was set at a couple of seconds before midnight, and the equivalent of 1 million Hiroshima bombs were locked and loaded and on hair-trigger firing orders. How did we get ourselves into that fix? For Heinlein, the core problem was not the biological truth of our sexually competitive nature, but our inability to transcend that nature through sharing. All human behavior, all human motivations, all man's hopes and fears were colored and controlled by mankind's tragic and oddly beautiful pattern of reproduction. The tragic part of the story for Heinlein was that whenever humans made beautiful love, they immediately wanted to possess the body they loved, even if it meant killing the body and all the competitors who wanted it also. Everything men did, from earning wages to becoming rulers and setting out to conquer the world, seemed to be done with an eye to getting and possessing sex partners. Everything women did, from dressing provocatively to damaging a rival's reputation through a clever slur, seemed to be motivated by their desire to attract a man to quicken eggs and make sure the family's wealth stayed at home, even if that wealth was excessive and people went hungry elsewhere. Stranger in a Strange Land argues, as do poly people, that if nuclear bombs are ever used in an all-out war, it will be because of the dog-eat-dog dynamic of sexual competition. In this, Heinlein and the poly people have considerable backing from evolutionary theorists. Trace the history of war through the centuries from the Trojan War onward, and you will find that, as for motives, sex is dominant, as Matt Ridley wrote in The Red Queen. The first war recorded in Homer's Iliad began with the abduction of a Budinus woman, Helen. If territory, resources, and power were gained by men in war, it made the victors more attractive to mates and eliminated rivals in the process. In both pre-literate societies and our own, men compete to accrue and display resources to attract partners, and once mated, husbands and wives join hands to gather and profligately use even more resources to promote the welfare of children born within their dyadic relationship. To scientists, there seems to be no way out of this Darwinian dilemma. Productive and destructive, it is the causa movens of all action. There is now overwhelming evidence that there is no other way for evolution to work except by competitive reproduction, according to Ridley. The free will of which we humans are so proud is just another mechanism to satisfy ambition, to compete with fellow human beings, and so eventually to be in a better position to reproduce and rear children than human beings who do not reproduce. Polyfidelitists, on the other hand, really believe that there is a way to rewrite this unforgiving script. Why not, like Valentine Smith, teach men and women ways to share sexual and emotional love within an expanded family that does not cramp the ability of people to love each other more? Wouldn't that take the edge off at least one cause of our woes? In this, the poly people are not as far as they believe from the thinking of play couples who merely don't make a big deal about proselytizing the truths they personally perceive. When asked, however, they tend to offer the loving more philosophy in earthy terms. As the Lifestyles organization's director of publicity, Steve Mason told the Los Angeles Times in 1998, "We've often thought that the best way to solve all the world's problems is to turn the United Nations into a swingers organization. How do you drop a bomb onto people that you've just had an orgasm with?" And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website, www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
franktalks.com.
A reading from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. Hi, I'm Zoltan, and welcome to another edition of Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from. This week's reading segment comes from The Lifestyle by Terry Gould, pages 309 to 311. People learn to let go when they're in a lifestyle sexual situation, Kathy Gardner said to me, standing beside her tall husband with whom she was a partner in their brokerage firm. Not that that's the only way to get to that place of freedom, but it appears that that's an effective way. When you're at middle age, remaining sexually open means remaining intellectually open. That was my point on Geraldo. I'll bet that went over well, I said. Kathy and Dan, Frank and Jennifer, and Jenny Friend had all been on the talk show circuit, which collectively included their appearances on Donahue, Sally Jesse Raphael, and Geraldo, and a few others of that stripe. They subjected themselves to that insanity because they all passionately believed they should be out there showing the world that the lifestyle was populated by normal folks. It was like, lynch 'em, kill 'em, Frank said. Sickos, pathological freaks. I really got scared for a second. What right do people have to call these people pathological? Anita Banker asked. What information do they have? I guess they think they all have 5 or 6 guys a night, I said. So? What's wrong with that? Anita laughed, and she wasn't joking at all. She and Michael Riskin were writing a book called Simultaneous Orgasm and Other Joys of Sexual Intimacy. In their convention workshops, they treated open eroticism and the lifestyle as normal behavior for those who liked it. Michael had even worked as a sex surrogate for women before he'd become a therapist. That is, he'd been paid for having sex with females who wanted the experience. I hadn't even known there was such a thing as male sex surrogate. The government doesn't want people feeling this free, Kathy said. I go out and I say, look, we have 5 kids, we are grandparents, and we care about the future. I never say the lifestyle is the end in itself, but it's a stepping stone to discovering yourself and a lot of mental freedom. That's spooky for the powers that be, especially when they see me up there on TV. I am mainstream America, and my mindset is mainstream American. And I have done everything socially acceptable to what mainstream is. Yes, I have one husband. But yet, I have found a way that I can satisfy my sexual desires and social needs by going through this door. I know that makes me very unmanageable from their point of view, but don't dare try and stop me. We're adamant about that, Frank said to me. Anybody discriminates against us because of the lifestyle, we'll sue their ass. About half an hour later, Jean Henry and her partner Clark Ross came through the door with a couple of colleagues she was staying with in Los Angeles. The looks on her friends' faces betrayed no surprise at the crowd. It turned out that they too believed swinging deserved some attention from academia. I waved to Jean and we sat down at a table in the back and watched some of the rites on the dance floor. I asked Jean if she'd found any differences between the subculture at clubs on the coast and in the South and Midwest. I was just telling them that I haven't. It's actually pretty uniform, she said. What's interesting is that the norm wherever you go in the subculture is to rebel against this one area of sexual prohibition and leave everything else alone. They really honestly believe that prohibition is based on an old set of rules that have survived despite the fact that the conditions have changed so much. I suppose historically, we've always been ruled by men who've made those prohibitions and then ignored them, her friend said. We still are, and they still do, Jean laughed. And that was an excerpt of The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. If you would like to read more about this, consult The Lifestyle by Terry Gould. This was Zoltan for Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles, a reading from Segment. If you have a suggestion of any literature you'd like us to review dealing with pleasures and lifestyles, please let us know now. Send an email to frank@franktalks.com. That's frank@franktalks.com, or visit our website, www.franktalks.com.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.